YouTube, hello, my name is Natalie, and in this video I'll share some words and some footage with regard to this new magnetic variable ND filter kit, which I purchased a few months ago and it arrived a few days ago. The reason I opted for the Freewell 7-in-1 variable ND and MIST set was that they were running a promotion on their limited edition 95mm filter kit. Now, those of you that have been following this channel probably know by now that I recently won this massive lens, the T2.8 Cine lens, and part of the excitement of having this is the ability to play with it wide open and start shooting some gorgeous footage with beautiful smooth backgrounds, shallow depth of field, all that nice separation between subject and background and all that stuff. All of this, of course, is not necessary, but it's a look that I haven't fully explored yet, so I'm keen to get going. But in order to shoot wide open outdoors or even indoors where there is bright light, you're most probably going to need neutral density filters to prevent overexposure while maintaining the 180-degree shutter rule, if that's a rule you're looking to adhere to. And for the beginners watching this, depending on the region that you live in, you may want to shoot at a video frame rate that is in sync with the frequency at which your lights flicker within that region. So I live in PAL regions, so a suitable frame rate is 25 frames per second or 50 or 125 frames per second, and so on and so forth. And in addition to this, the general rule of thumb for capturing video footage that will feel pleasing to the viewers or somewhere along the line of general rule of thumb for capturing video footage that'll feel pleasing to a viewer's eye is you want to shoot at a shutter speed that is double the frame rate. So if I'm shooting at 25 frames per second, I'd like to keep my shutter speed at 1/50. So that's 50 times that the shutter is going to close and open in a second. And this ratio of shutter speed and frame rate, or frame rate and shutter speed, also known as the 180-degree rule, creates a motion blur that our eyes are trained to see in movies. Our eyes aren't actively aware of this motion blur, but if it's not there or if it's too pronounced, we will notice it, and it'll probably make us feel a bit off, and it could take the viewer out of that viewing experience, that watching experience, because something will feel wrong. If there isn't enough of that blur, it'll look crispy, and it reminds me of those TV soap operas, and if there's too much blur, it might feel a bit strange, dreamy, maybe a bit just uncomfortable. Now, you can totally play around with this, but note that you might be doing so at a potential risk of the viewer experience. Okay. So keeping in mind this general rule while shooting with T2.8 lens wide open, if I'm shooting in a bright light, 25 frames per second with the 180-degree shutter, while aiming to maintain my camera's native ISO, which for this one is ISO 640 in bright conditions, in most outdoor daylight conditions, I'll have many areas of overexposure. And this is where the ND filters come in. They'll reduce the amount of light that comes through the lens and hits the sensor so that you can shoot wide open if that's something that you'd like to do. Audio sync, click, click, click. All right, this is the setup we have. I'm recording this with my phone and with the Osmo Action. And that's the scene we're gonna record, just that in focus. And then we've got a strong light in the background. And the whole thing is pretty much overexposed, as you can see over here. We've got 25 frames per second, native ISO, 180-degree shutter. Right. Gonna take this 2 to 5 stop. My phone is not focusing well, but there is an A. Come on, phone. Anyway, hopefully the Osmo catches it. Match A with A over there. And then we have our variable ND on there. We're at 2.8, by the way, and as you can see, very minimal difference. And then we're gonna turn this over until, keep turning this until we're no longer clipping highlights. There we go. What value do we have it at? We have it at a reduction of 5. So this is the 2 to 5. So this is great. Adding mist to the variable ND effect basically causes regions of light to appear more diffused, giving the illusion of a misty feel, and this kind of spreading of the light into the surrounding darker, shadowy regions results in our shadows lifting, and with that we reduce the contrast in our captured field of view. Now, whether I like this or not is still to be determined, but it is slowly growing on me and I will keep playing around with it. Okie dokie, there wasn't too much planning with this part of the demonstration. We've got this set at 2 stops reduction, the VND base, and I use the exposure on my Panasonic to help me figure out what's peaking. And it's just a few little bits of peaking over there, but this over there is overexposed over there. This is the setting that we have. Alrighty, so now we're over here, switched over. So VND MIST, so this is at 2 stops reduction of light. There should be a reduction in contrast on my face, which is expected with mist as far as my reading and my video watching goes. But the question is, do we like it? Did I set this up right? So let me place this over here so that you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to switch this over. So let's quickly take off this 2 to 5 stop VND component. Put this here. Let's take off the mist base. I'm going to put this here so long. Let's grab the VND base. Let's put this in. Keep in mind, this is the first time that I'm using this. So how user-friendly is it? VND in, and now let's put this in at the exact same setting that we had it. And then take it down to 2 stops of light. How do we feel about that? Am I even in focus? I should have checked that better. So we've got the Deso film set at 2.8 at roughly at 50 millimeter focal length. I've also got our nan light here shining on my face. And then as you can see, we've got the reduction of the stops of light reduction. If I can get this to focus. Take my word for it, that says 2. So we've got pretty much the exact same settings, so just really quickly switch them out. Let's change this up so that we've increasing the stops of light reduction slightly. Just past 2 this time around. Focus just past 2 this time around. How do we feel? How do we feel? Circular polarizers are most popular for reducing reflective glare from non-metallic surfaces, and also for managing that glare from polarized light, which we're shooting out at the sky, is most effective if we have the sun shining at a 90-degree angle from the lens. Now, this management that I'm referring to in the sky is essentially reducing that glare, which is produced or is a product of polarized light, and that makes the sky look bright and hazy. And this management of glare from polarized light also comes with a reduction in exposure and results in resaturation or sometimes even oversaturation in the sky color. Now, I don't quite understand what is meant by polarized light. I haven't even looked it up, but I guess the light or glare that results from the reflection of a non-metallic surface is polarized light. And in addition to not understanding polarized light, I'm most confused by how one side of the variable ND can flip over and then it's a circular polarizer. We've got no microphone on, so excuse the audio. Windy day is sunny. We've got the ND set at, well, the variable ND set at 8 stops reduction of light. I've got a couple of hotspots still on my forehead here and on the rim of my t-shirt. So a diffuser could actually be good for this, but we're going to turn this over and see what the different uses are. So the ND, the variable ND, is to reduce the amount of light coming in, but the circular polarizer, I'm going to take this off, flip it over, let's just plonk it on there, and though you might get a reduction in light coming through, this is more about reflective surfaces and polarized light in the sky, I guess. So does that count as a reflective surface? Do we have glare on the glass? Do we Note how you can see through the glass now and to the blinds, whereas before there was a reflective glare, but closer to the center, the glare in the sky is still there, and in the one before, there is less sky glare. That's because this is a circular polarizer and the effect isn't uniform, it's a gradient. Now the setup for this particular kit, this Freewell 7-in-1 magnetic set, is pretty straightforward. We have the circular ring thing that fits a 95mm lens diameter. Mine's 86mm, so I attach it to a step-up ring that goes onto my lens, and this circular thing has one groove and two indicators that are of initial interest, and those are this groove over here for the base, and for those indicators I'm referring to the A and the arrow next to it. Being aware of these will make the mixing and matching so much easier, and once the ring is on, we decide whether we want to utilize this at its VND capacity or if we want to add MIST, and that's where we decide which base glass to add. If you choose VND, this base is a one-stop ND filter. This is where the groove comes in handy. If you want some MIST, replace the base VND with that MIST base, and any additional variable ND or CPL application will produce a seemingly diffused image. And let's say I want the MIST effect and I feel that around 4 stops of light will be appropriate. I just add this magnetic VND, the 2 to 5 stop VND marker facing U, make sure the A matches A, give it a little twist to ensure that the hard stops are there, and that's that. Let's say I need the CPL to reduce the reflective glare from a non-metallic surface. Just pull the VND off, flip it around, and I totally don't get this, but now you have a circular polarizer at your disposal. Now you can protect all of this with this strong feeling magnetic glass cover, or you can remove all the glass and insert this rubbery plastic cover plug-like thing. Now a nice plus with regard to having an ND over my lens as opposed to stopping down with the aperture, and this is particular to my setup. This is a Super 35 lens that I'm placing over a full frame sensor, so stopping down using the aperture rings will introduce a vignette almost immediately. So the ND helps me prevent this because I'm stopping down while keeping the aperture wide open. Now this could of course be an issue if I'm shooting with an intention of having a deep depth of field, because a wide open aperture will produce a shallow depth of field. Having a variable ND as opposed to a solid ND means that you won't have a uniform effect on certain regions, and certain regions of the frame will be more affected than others depending on how the filter is turned or positioned or twisted. A similar principle applies to the circular polarizers, where, for example, the sky won't be evenly adjusted and vignetting might occur. And again, this doesn't bother me much, at least not for the purposes for which I've been making videos up until now. So it's all good and no worries from me with that regard, at least not yet. Overall, I'm new to this world of variable NDs and MIST and all that stuff, and I'm looking forward to keep experimenting and learning with these new tools. But considering the large size of my kit, the 95mm is the most convenient size I could have opted for, and I am grateful that Freewell chose to include this in their campaign. Fly. The 95mm diameter means it'll fit my largest lens with a step-up ring, and it will fit all my other lenses with all the other step-up and step-down rings. So far, I think it's going to be a convenient setup, especially considering that this kit pretty much has it all, from 2 to 9 stops of variable ND light reduction that I can opt to add MIST or diffusion effects to, and a range of circular polarizing effects that should suffice in most lighting conditions. And let's end things there. Thanks so much for watching, folks. Don't forget to... Why have I suddenly gone blank? Don't forget to keep taking photos, keep making videos. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I do appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next one.